Welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns. I'm your host, Josh Pies, the chief attention getter and hippie capitalist at C47 Digital Studios. This show is an exploration of entrepreneurship because it's important to hear people's inspirational stories of where they were and where they're going and how they've gotten to where they are. But even more important is to glean all those tactical, actionable data points that we can use on our own journeys as we grow our businesses and we can say, yes, we bootstrapped to become a unicorn. Bootstrapped Unicorns, welcome back. It is yet another episode, and I have another one of my favorite people on the show today. I'm going to introduce you to Karen Anderson in a moment. She is a book publishing and writing expert extraordinaire. She's my go-to expert on this topic, and she also works with Morgan James Publishing, and we may get into their business model a little bit today. It's something that you really should be aware of. If you are in business for yourself, if you own a business, you're a leader in a business, you are a candidate to write a book. You might not have thought that, but you're going to learn a business model today and a plan that she's going to unveil that I so fully believe in that I'm well on my journey into writing a book, and she is helping me do that. So you're meeting my guru today. So before we go too far, I do want to let you know that we are a sponsored podcast. HireVP is our provider for our virtual professionals. We are so proud to work with them. Really, we're even more proud to work with the VPs they place with us. They're part of our team. They drive great activity and creativity and positive good work in our business, but we also just like them. And you want to work with a virtual assistant. You probably know that term, a virtual professional that you like. And we're batting 1,000. We've got a really good record here. So if you want that for yourself, go to hirevp.us/unicorns and you can get 10% off your first 3 months if you go ahead and do that. Also, say hi to let's say Scott and Chloe and Dexter, the whole executive leadership team there. They're really cool, and you're going to enjoy working with them as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Karen, my dear friend. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm great. I'm just really grateful to be here. So it's good to see you. And
it's good to see you too. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I have a 6-year-old grandson, and if you say to him, Og, how are you? He's like, great. Like, that's his response. And so I'm adopting that, and that's going to be my my response for him. I'm great.
So I detect a sense of Canadian in that. There's almost a question mark at the end of that. Is that how he phrases it?
I think he does, but it could be because he has bossy older sisters, and he's always figuring out how to get a word in edgewise. So
my son is kind of living that life as well with his older sisters. I don't know how bossy they are, but boy, they're talkative. And
I love mine, man. They're bossy and talkative.
It's such is the way, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I have worked on a whole bunch of projects with you, and we know we just run in the same circles, right? And so I drank the Kool-Aid when it comes to book publishing probably about, 6 or 7 years ago when you explained the business model to me. And it's almost shocking to me how few people who are entrepreneurs, who have great expertise, have missed the boat on understanding what it means to write a book. Because I think a lot of people, and I was in this camp, I thought that was what you do when you're done with your career to keep you busy as you're putting a bow on things. I thought that was the swan song. And there are some people who handle it that way. They've had their big C-suite career and they need something to do. So they're going to pass down some knowledge and some great stories. And it's kind of memoir education type stuff. And that's one way of doing it. But you've got a completely different thing that I don't want our audience to miss the boat on. How do you describe the books that you are getting out there?
Sure. Well, there are all sorts of books out there, and how you use a book and why you use a book is really the question. What you were describing is what I call a legacy book. Like you've gotten to the kind of end, later time, and you just want to go, I've learned so much, and I really want to put that into print so that I can get that information out to as many people as possible. Most people want to serve others and not have them go to the school of hard knocks like they did. And so it's a great opportunity. And I love those kinds of books. That said, I really love using a book as what I would call a lead gen for your business. So if you have an opportunity to put your expertise into a book and give that that information and expertise to your market, then what I tell people is the reason somebody wants to do business with you is that you've given them something of value, and they've gotten something from value. And what I like to say with lead gens is that I think it's a great opportunity to give people your expertise to help them do what they need to do, and you give them everything that they need to do it themselves. And then the reality is that most people go, yeah, but I don't want to do it myself. Like, can I just pay you to do this? Or can you help me with this? Or, thank you. This was great. I needed that foundation. Now I'm busy. I want to take my, what I'm doing to the next level. What can you do to help me? And so it ends up being a value added lead gen. I personally, I don't like lead gens where people want to hold back. They're just like, I'm going to give them a teaser and I'm going to give them most everything that I know and then have them come back and then they're going to need me. Philosophically, I don't believe in that. What I really want is people to be empowered. And then the more you empower people, the more they're going to want more from you. Whether it's more expertise or shortcuts or support or whatever it is. So what I like to do with books is really reverse engineer. Like what do you want who do you want your ideal client to be? What do you want them to do? What do they need? And what do you have of value that you can share with that client? I often will, we have a friend, mutual friend, the late Dan Miller. And Dan was great in saying that if somebody asked him a question 3 times, he created a product. And while I don't do that personally, part of what I love about that idea is that if you're hearing things over and over and over, questions that people have, often you can deliver that solution to them via a book where you give them everything that they need. And then again, once they recognize that, they'll go, oh, so now I need more help. Now I need your expertise. Now I need, like I said, support, community, strategy, like all the things. So I feel like if you're in business today, having a book not only gives you credibility, authority, all the things that books do, it gives you, like a podcast, it gives you an opportunity to interact with somebody in a very detailed way where you're really leveraging your time and talents, because it's not a one-on-one, it's a one-to-many.
I totally agree. And you said something interesting that I think I want to spend a little time on, the idea that you wouldn't hold things back in a book. And I fully agree. And so if the question I'm about to ask sounds like pushback, it's devil's advocate to set up the opportunity to talk about it. But like, why wouldn't we hold something back? There's the school of thought that, well, if you give the farm away, you gave the farm away. And I hear you. I agree that people won't take action on the whole plan if you give them the whole plan, because they have other things to do. Right. But what is it about holding something back and protecting some of the way you do it, or some of your intellectual property that you've so hard earned? What is it that's not good about holding some back?
Yeah. And I'll answer that in 2 ways. One is just the philosophical point of, are you trying to manipulate your audience into working with you, or are you going to give them everything of value? I feel like people have a spidey sense when they're reading, like, oh, they're holding back. It's really a psychological, philosophical play that you want to be generous with what you're doing. Generosity, in my experience, is always going to be something that comes back and supports you, as opposed to something that bites you. And that said, I often will say, what I want you to do is put everything, the best of the best of the best in 200 pages. And the reality is you can't put everything that you know in 200 pages. Like, there's going to be more. And so if you give people, it's like the tip of the iceberg. If you give people the top tier, and it's really good, but then you go, but I can't do everything here. I can give you more. You can either actually take them, and this is what I love to do, take them from your book to connect with you somehow in your website or whatever, where you have an email relationship with them. You have a relationship with them. And so then you can say, oh, I told you as much as I could about X, but there's more to the story. So it's a sense of, I would love to go deeper, but here's a way we can communicate. Here's a way that I can give you something for free. Here's a way I can build my relationship with you, with the idea of being able to build a relationship, as opposed to just you're dangling a carrot out there hoping that somebody bites. And wait, I just mixed my metaphor. But you're dangling something out there so that they'll grab onto it as a way to get them. And I feel like it's actually more of a base. What's your intent? Because
Yeah.
honestly, if you're trying to lure your clients, customers in, and you're waiting to leverage it on the back end. You're waiting to, because you're like, I'm gonna really get something out. If it's all about you and not about them, then to me it's going to fall apart. You're not going to get the right customers. You're not going to get the right people. You're not going to get the kind of people that are honest and true. Like, you just really want to mirror what you're doing in terms of who you want to attract, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense. And I also like the idea that you've already trained your client on understanding your process if you've given them the whole process. So when they come in, there really are no surprises. Now,
Yeah.
they might not be able to do it on their own, but they've got a sense of where everything's going. So
Yeah, and that actually helps you.
yeah,
Like, how
immensely.
if you go, here's my ideal client, you got them up to speed, and then you can take them further. And so for me, using a book as a great lead gen gets them up to speed. They can do it themselves, but then if they really want to accelerate it, then they can get your services or your products or whatever it is that you're offering. So I just view it as a win-win. So if
Yeah.
you give them everything they need to do it themselves, then again, they've got the foundation before they start working with you. So you've got a more educated, attuned customer or client that's going to be in a better position to be worked with.
So who are authors that our audience might know that you've worked with who are doing some of these things?
Oh gosh. Well, I worked with one author who's doing really well with his book, and his name is Steve Anderson. And we have the same last name for a reason. But I helped Steve with his book. It was called The Bezos Letters: 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon.
It was a great book. I love that book.
It is. It's a very fun book. But I think I know I wrote it, but it's also it's a good book to say, oh, we started with this book with, really, like many authors, I just want to do a book. I want to get out there. I want to have the credibility. I want to break through the glass ceilings. I want to serve people, like all the things. And fortunately, the book's done really well. And we are now in 20 languages.
It's up to 20 now? I think last time we talked about this, it was like 14 languages.
Yeah, we're up to 20 languages now.
Wow.
So it's a book, and it's not just paper and ink. It's your heart, your soul, your ideas.
Yeah.
It's your perspective. But when you think about it, it's a way to have global impact. And so people that you would go, oh, I would never imagine that I could reach this kind of market. You have an opportunity through a book to reach a market that you may never have expected. So that was a fun one.
Yeah, well, certainly. And how is that? I mean, when it comes to the Bezos letters, I know there's ways of reaching out to you and Steve from the book. Have you heard from readers? Are you interacting? Are there speaking requests? Are there consulting requests? What's happening as a result of the existence of this book?
Yeah, all of the above. So I wrote it, but Steve is really the expert. It was they were his ideas. And let me just say parenthetically, in the old days, using a collaborator on a book, a ghostwriter, it was sort of, it was frowned upon. And ghostwriters, would hide in the background. You wouldn't know it. And today it's a very, very different world, because one of the things that people, I think, acknowledge is that we all have different skills and gifts. And
Right.
I've got people that I've worked with that are phenomenal speakers. Steve's a great speaker, but he didn't quite know how to write a book. And
Yep.
so asking for help in things like ghostwriting, editorial, to have a quality product, because it is important that, and I say this often too, that today people across the board, they're tired and they're distracted. And so, because if you go with that, then whenever you're writing any message, it has to be clean and clear. Because if it's not, then if it's too much work for them to understand it, then they go, I'll deal with that later. And then later never comes. So that said, so he employed, I just did air quotes on that. He employed me as his ghostwriter. And so I was able to write the book. He is the expert. He's one. So when businesses have him speak or he comes in, he's speaking on topic. They're not asking me. They're talking to him. So it's
Yeah.
really, it's functioned really well. And what's also been fun is to see that it's gotten some. This was my biggest compliment. One of my biggest compliments. Alex Hermosi
Yeah.
is an author. He did a list. I think it was last year of like the top 10 or 12 books that he rereads every year, and Bezos Letters was one of them. And it included like Cialdini's Influence. It had some great books on it, but he said
Wow.
he reads it every year. And I was like, okay, that's a super high compliment. And so
Yeah,
the
for those who don't know, who are watching and listening, Alex is a young man who is worth hundreds of millions of dollars and one of the most prolific content creators on the planet. And he is educating people very freely on his journey to being a billionaire. And he has my respect for sure. So if he wants me to read the Bezos letters, I'm going to read the Bezos letters. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, but to your point, what you just said is that he gives very freely. So to
Mm-hmm.
your point about holding back, I mean, I think Alex is also good. He gives very freely, and when you think about the people that have the highest influence and the biggest impact, you will often hear people describe them as they give very freely, and so that's kind of the heart and attitude I think that behind giving a book. So am I telling you to like absolutely give away all your trade secrets? No. What I'm suggesting is that when you look at doing your book, you're giving very freely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you're giving freely inside of what we know is a pile of paper. That's going to be really important. But in order to make that thing work, you've got to get that really important pile of paper with all of your heart and soul into people's hands. How and why do you do that? I know you've got some really good clarity from kind of the nuts and bolts of like tactical getting it into bookstores and things. And I know you got that as well, but almost on the ethereal side of like, how do we get our ideal client to be a better human tomorrow by having read a book? What's that play?
Well, at its most base level, Josh, the thing that promotes books and by definition messages is always going to be word of mouth. It's always that's what reviews are on Amazon. It's nothing but word of mouth. It's basically
Yeah.
I saw this book and I love this book or I hated this book. But I don't know about you, but if I go to either buy something, not that happens, but if I go to buy something on Amazon or get a book on Amazon, I'm looking at the reviews. I may not talk to that person personally, but I'm looking at reviews and I'm looking to see, do the majority of people that are reading this book find it useful, and how do they find it useful? That's the porch conversation people used to have in the old days, with their cup of coffee going, I read this book and I think you'd really like it. But the bottom line is that word of mouth is really going to be what promotes books. So if somebody reads your book and they go, this was incredibly valuable, the thing that they're going to do is they're going to tell somebody who's important to them about the value of this book. And then you go, oh, that makes sense. So it's really, in nonfiction today, it really is about what can you do to add value. And if you're adding value and people feel like you hear them, you get them, you're adding value, you contribute in your life, they're going to tell their friends. And so, part of what you do in your business is you amplify that, like you're the amplifier. But the bottom line is it's that person that says, oh, I love that book. There's a new book out. And I did not write it, nor did I publish it. I didn't have anything to do with it. It's a fiction book. It's called Theo of Golden, and it's by a man named Alan Levi. And I love this book. I read a lot for a living, and I read a lot because I read a lot. I love this book. It's a fiction book. It's just a very well written. I love the story. For me, the highest endorsement that I could give is that I've read it 4 times consecutively. So I finished it, reread it, reread it, reread it. Now, I will
Wow.
say I'm in the business. And so part of what I look for in a book was the first time I read it for plot, I wanted to see what happened, it was an extraordinary read. And the second time I read it, I really looked at character development. Like, how did he make these people come alive? And whether you're writing nonfiction, actually, especially if you're writing nonfiction, you need to understand story, because story is what moves the needle. That's what makes a difference in books. And so I was reading it for story, character development. And then the third time I was reading it for wordsmithing. Like, how did he craft the second sentences? How did he make this make sense for the reader? And then the fourth time I read it, I can't even remember why I read it again, but I read it over and over and over again, because I really learned from reading this book. That said, one of the things that I did was, as soon as I got done reading it, I called my best friends and went, "Oh my gosh, guess what you're getting in the mail? I'm sending this book to you like right now. This was an amazing book." And so I bought the book and gifted the book. And this is true about many books right now. People are buying multiple versions of the same book, meaning I originally downloaded the ebook, but then I bought the print book. And so, and there's not an audio yet, but if there were an audio, I would have bought it. So what people are doing is they're buying the same book multiple times. And so that's something to kind of tuck away, that they're not, I call it, they don't cannibalize each other. Ebooks and print books don't cannibalize each other, meaning if I buy the E, I'll get the print. If I get the print, I'll get the E. That happens a lot. And so one of the opportunities that you have is, and let me say this as an aside, and I read him a fan letter, and so I've been.
You wrote him a fan letter. That's very teeny bopper of you.
It is. I was just like, I loved your book. Thank you so much.
Has he responded yet?
Yeah, he did, and I got a very, very sweet, very, very nice, sweet email from him. And when I was talking to him, one of the things that they have is they have an email list, and I was like, oh, but if you don't mind me pointing out, one of the things at the end of the book was there wasn't any way to capture the person's email. And so anybody who's doing a book today, I recommend that you build a relationship with the reader. Yeah. And so you do that via email. And so if you don't have any kind of call to action at the end of a book, then there's no way to know who got that book. And so if you're offering some kind of call to action that they can get something extra in exchange for their contact information, then you have a way to open a relationship with them. But that's all to say, it's just an illustration on my part, because I have no skin in the game. I mean, no skin in the dang, dog in the hunt, whatever it is. I have nothing vested interest in this book except that I loved it. But I bought it multiple copies for myself. I've bought multiple copies for friends. I'm actually sharing it right now with you all. And that's the power of a book. You can reach people, and like I said, what you do is amplify that message. The more people you get reading the book, the more they're going to tell other people. The more they tell other people, the more there's going to be that groundswell of people that go, oh. And particularly in business, that's why I think it's really, and that was a fiction book, but in business, like knowing who your ideal reader is, and knowing your market and who you want to attract, and creating in such a way that you've got a compelling read. Because again, people are tired and people are distracted. But if you can meet a need and help solve a problem, and you can have impact in somebody else's life, then that's going to spread over, whether it's them giving your book to another right person, or whether they're the right person. It really is a way to connect with people and to get your message out in a way that's very, I would say, relatively intimate. When you're if you're reading somebody, it's just you and the person who's talking.
Yeah, that relationship is amazing. You've often said that this is the most expensive business card, most time-consuming business card design in the history of any individual's business, but it's also the most effective. And I fully agree. And this happens with me all the time. I read at least one business, self-help style book a week. And I find myself a devotee of that person's thing very quickly. And I am on their list, and it's a good ecosystem.
Let me just make one comment. Yeah. One comment, Josh.
Do it.
When it comes to using, because I hear people talk about using a book as a big business card, and yes, that's true, because what they're implying is that it has your contact information, it's who you are, it's a business card. I don't like the term personally, because your business card's about you. and your book needs to be about them. Like if
Fair.
your book is all about you, then most people don't really care about you.
Sure.
But if you're writing something that's going to be connect with them and it's about them, then it's really not. I don't like the term business card, because it really is. It's you investing in them and in what they need. And so
Right.
I think you'll see the books that are most successful are the ones that are really talking about transformation at whatever level, in whatever area. It's about how to transform either a person or a process or an idea so that people get it, but it's about them. It's not about you.
No, I totally agree. But, in the idea of trying to build a know, like, and trust, reality, that book hopefully speaks volumes about who your business is, who you are, your character, your promise to the world. And so on that level, you don't get that from a little piece of paper. You do have a shot at it, a good shot at it, if somebody were to read your book. But to your point, if it was one of those things, and I've had this happen, I have sat down with somebody, talked about a whole bunch of stuff, and at the end of it, they just throw a book at me and go, "Here, read my book." Why? I have no clue. But if a conversation is had where somebody goes, "Hey, you know what? We just talked about something, and I have something to say on that." They pull it out and they write a note in the front cover saying, "Josh, you got to read at least chapter 7. I hope you read the whole book. I think it's going to help you with this." And then they hand me this purpose-filled document that is now the business card that I envision working. And it's not just the soulless exchange of, "Here, take this pile of paper. I'm important."
Yeah. And that's it. It's about connection.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. It connects you in a way that's elevated more than just, you put your phones together and your contact information gets shared. It gives you an opportunity that you wouldn't have otherwise.
It's funny we were talking about this because I'm thinking about it as we're going. I've had a lot of authors on this show, and some don't send me their book. Well, then now I'm going to have to find out about their book while they're on my show. A little awkward.
Yeah.
They're the minority. Some send me a PDF, so at least I can scan it. Okay, that was utilitarian and functional. Some send me a hard copy. Well, now I've got a hard copy, which feels good, and I will read it more seriously than the PDF because I hate reading on screen. And after my car accident last year, I can't see the screen the right way anyhow, and all this stuff. So I really need the book. But then some of them send me a stack. And so I'll get 3 books. I'll get 6 books. And they'll say, "Please read a copy that is already signed usually. And we hope you personally get something out of it. And I can't wait to talk to you on your show." Well, now I have to take them seriously. But you better believe I have found 4 or 5 people in my world who will benefit from something I saw in their book. And I'm out there running around selling not their book because I'm giving it away for free, but I'm selling trust.
Absolutely.
Or trading trust, I suppose. I'm gifting trust. There's no money there. The money comes later when that trust is actually built. But that is that viral trust giving happens, the word of mouth that you just described, from getting your book freely shared. And I think that's kind of the holy grail.
Yeah, and I would say that's a really good illustration of what I also often say, which is that you're typically you make more money off of your book than you do from your book. Meaning, yes, you can get royalties, or if you're selling your book yourself, you can make money from that book. You can. Yep. There are a lot of people, I would say the minority of people today, that are making tons of money from sales of their book. But for the most part, people are making money off of their book, meaning if they give it away for free. So let's say all in, I'm just pulling this number because it's more complicated than that. But let's say, if you've got a $10 book and you're giving away $10 book, or you're not making the $10 on the book, but you end up getting a speaking gig it's going to make you $10,000 or $15,000, or you get a consulting gig that's going to, you've got a business book and you get a $150,000 contract, because you have the expertise, the authority, the credibility, all the things around your book, then you go, okay, how do I weigh this? yes, you get royalties and you can get the sale from the book. But for the most part, people that are using the book strategically are making more money off of the book than they are from the book itself. And so that's why I say it's really, really, really important to know what you want that book to do, because you got to reverse engineer and figure out how much you're willing to invest in that book, given what you want. So if somebody says to me, so for example, a legacy book, like you were talking about, like I want to take my expertise and I want to put it in a book and I want people to learn from it. That's great. You still have to market the book, but that's great. But if it doesn't lead to anything, then you go, okay, then that might end up being a philanthropic endeavor. But for most people in business, they want their book to lead to something that's going to generate revenue or something in the future. And so they have to really figure out what it is that they want to know what they need to invest to make it happen.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, because what you're describing is, it's, some people might call it a marketing campaign. Some people might call it a business plan, an actual business model. And I think the reality is that your book, given this context, not a legacy book, it's a business endeavor of its own, in order to benefit your existence, your company's existence, wherever that money is going to flow. You've got to design this. And I look at, C47 right now is growing in a way where we're working with franchise specialists to look at franchising the model. And so if we successfully franchise this, one of the things that I've been cautioned about up front is that C47 is its own business, and the activity of franchising anything is a separate sales target with a separate business proposition, unique selling proposition. There's a whole other business that we're choosing to go into in order to sell to franchisees who would then practice what we do at C47 on their own. It's a second business. And so your book will also have elements of that, where it is almost a second business. Yes, it's tied to your first business. Yes, there is synergy, but it is a different business model. It is a completely new tactic that you've probably never considered. And you're right. If you don't think about it up front, fixing it on the back end is nigh unto impossible.
Yeah. And I 1,000% agree with you, because what you're saying is really true. So you can build a business around your book. So the book is your message, and you can do a mastermind, you can do speaking, you can do courses, you can there are all sorts of things that you can do around the message in your book, and you can make a business around that. Or, as kind of what I was referring to earlier, that book can be part of developing your business. That book can be one of the ways that you get your message out for your business. But you have to be clear about which direction you're going. Now, will they overlap? Yes. But if you want to build a business around your book, doing that is more intentional than saying, okay, I have a business and I want to use a book to help facilitate my business and take my business to the next level. So 100%, 1,000% agree with you on that one, Josh.
Well, I'm glad we're like-minded on that. So now the audience, I'm sure somebody's going right now, oh, shoot, I think I need to write a book. And
that always makes me happy.
Right. And so, and we'll get to the whole, how do you find Karen and how do you get help thing, because they're going to need you. But before we get to that, though, what is your advice for somebody who is having this thought for the first time? They're realizing that maybe they do have a voice that can be beneficial to an audience. They're bought in now. They want to give freely. They want to give as much as they can, but they also want to build a relationship with their audience so that they can monetize for their business. They've figured all of that out emotionally, and they don't know now the first step. What do you do?
Yeah, that's great. Well, we hadn't talked about this ahead of time, but I'll do this. One of the things that I can provide for you to give to your audience, I'll give you a link to a document I put together, and it's called Write Your Jacket Copy First. Oh. And basically, if you look at how people look at books, they typically, whether they're doing it online, but let's just say they got a real book in their hand. You look at the cover, you look at the title, the subtitle, and then what do? You flip it over and you look at the back jacket copy, and you're making a decision about whether you want to get the book or not. And so you look at what's the title, what's the message of the book? Why should I read this book? What am I going to get out of it? What am I going to learn? Who's this author? Why should I listen to them? And so I put together a little document and give it to you for free that says, Write Your Jacket Copy First. And I found that it's just for some people, the best thing they can do is they've got ideas that have been running around in their head for years or decades or a lifetime. And sometimes being able to focus and write down, this is what my working title would be. This is what my subtitle would be. This is what I want this book to do. It's just a way to kind of focus your intention and then go, maybe I can make this work. And then you can build a book around it. So it's just a nice, jumping off point. So happy to do that if you think that would be of interest to your listeners.
Of course. Yeah, that would be amazing. So we've written our jacket copy now. We believe we might have something there. Do you just start writing? Do you open a Google Doc or a Word doc and start brain dumping to get your juices flowing? Or is there an outlining process that should happen?
Yeah, well, this is you open Pandora's box here. Like
I love that. I'm sorry, and you're welcome.
I'm a huge Scrivener fan, and if you go to my website, if people want it, if you go to my website, which is KarenAnderson.co, I didn't get com, I didn't get the M because it was $95,000, and I decided I didn't need it that badly.
That's pricey for that.
I got KarenAnderson.co. There's a link there for Scrivener. And let me tell you, and there's some free books there if they want books too. Bezos is there and a couple other books. But I love Scrivener. And the way Scrivener is just it's a little program. It's like $40. I also have a link to Joseph Michael's Learn Scrivener Fast because they helped me a lot. But basically, if you think about, like if you've got iPhotos and you've got all your iPhotos. And so let's say for me, I took 1,000 pictures I've got 7 grandkids at Connor's and Avalon's and Declan's and Braden's. Like I've got thousands of pictures in here. And then I want to do a little folder. And in that folder, I'm going to do birthday party, best pictures from birthday party. And I want to pull one from each of those 1,000 pictures and I drag it in. And then I've got, 7 pictures in birthdays for 2024. And it's just easy. I click and drag. Well, the exciting thing the thing I love about Scrivener is you can do that with text and you can do that with copy. So if you can create folders just like you would with iFolders, and you can write text and then you can move it around. You move it around just like you would like in iPhotos. And so a Google Doc and Word docs feel very linear to me. Like you can't see what you're doing. And then if you go, I have this paragraph, you have to go cut and paste, and then you have to go find where it needs to go. Scrivener just allows you to move it around in a very, very fluid way. So if people and this is the reason I'm telling you all this, is that I find that what constrains many people is they think in a linear way in terms of a book. They have a preconceived notion, probably from their 4th grade, essay teacher, that goes, you have to start at chapter 1 and then you end at chapter 12, and you have to know the sequence and you have to know what it is. Scrivener to me is like a giant vault, and you just create you just create folders and you just start throwing stuff in folders. So there may be things that you've written in the past or ideas. With Scrivener, you can actually do 3x5 cards and move them all around. And so it gives you a way to kind of map things out without feeling constrained, like you can't see what's in front of you and you can't easily move things around. So I offer that as a tool because I've probably written 7 or 8 or 9 books in Scrivener. And the reason I recommend it is it sometimes helps you get out of your own way. And so you just can start putting ideas. And then if you go, oh, that makes sense, you start doing some research, you pull that in, and then you start building it out. And then you can actually begin that process of going, oh, this is actually not as intimidating as I thought, and it's kind of fun. And you get your ideas. And then, at that point, I think you can go, oh, I have this sense that there's something here, or, this will be good one day just for my grandchildren.
I like being able to have a go, no go experience at the lowest barriers possible, as little friction as possible. I remember when I first got into screenwriting, this was, I couldn't afford Final Draft. Final Draft was hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And, anybody who gets into screenwriting usually is broke. I'm not sure why that's a thing. And so, 3x5 cards were the way. And if you read good screenwriters, texts to learn the method, there is an organizational style in 3x5s. And so I remember my living room floor We vacuumed and I cleaned everything out. And I had sections of 3x5 cards because I was afraid to put them on the wall because I didn't want to have to repaint. And we were moving things around. And so the idea that, you can do that now digitally and categorize well, it's so nice.
Yeah, it's so nice. And like I say, I feel like it's just a tool, but it's a tool that can, help expedite the process for you. And again, I there's a little bit of a learning curve to it, but I would say it's minimal. It's sort of like my son-in-law one time, he got rid of it, but he got a Tesla, and like I didn't know how to open the door. Like I was like, oh, I'm standing there going, hello. And so, yeah, but I figured out how to get in the door, and then I got to where I needed to go. And so it was fine. And so I just say that, but I think people often, part of the barrier to entry for writing a book is like, oh, I don't know how to do it. And I've got stuff in Dropbox, and I've got stuff in Evernote, and I've got stuff, like all over the plate. I go, oh, just make one receptacle, just have one place, and start dropping ideas, start dropping articles, start dropping everything in there. And then pretty soon you can go, oh, I can see some themes emerging. And I think it ends up, adding to the excitement and the opportunity so that you don't get so overwhelmed and throw your hands up in the air and go, I give up. I can't do this.
Yeah, and you don't want to get to that point, especially if you've got some, real story to tell and real ideas to share. So, assuming somebody's going down the road a little bit and they've actually got something that seems like a draft, who do they show it to, and can they ever show it to you?
Yeah, it kind of depends on where people are in the process. So I have two hats. So I'm a strategic book coach, meaning I help people figure that out exactly. Like, do they have a message? Is this something that they want to do? Is it worth their investment? Is it worth the time? Like, where are they on that? And so on that continuum, I kind of do that, have that strategic book coach, private consulting, that's what I do. On the other hand, if they've worked really hard and they've got a draft manuscript and they've written it out and they feel like they've got something worthwhile and they're actually thinking about publishing it, then I put on my publisher hat. So I've been with Morgan James, I believe it or not, like 9 years now. And
wow.
So part of what I do is I evaluate manuscripts, and sometimes I have to tell people their baby's ugly, but I do it in a very, very nice, lovely way. Because here's the thing, and I say this with much love and affection. And you've heard me say this before. The good news is Amazon lowered the bar so that anybody can write a book. And the bad news is that Amazon lowered the bar and anybody can write a book. And so if you're going to write a book, it needs to be a good book, because otherwise, I mean, you can sell 6 copies, but depending on what your goals are, that needs to be a good book. It needs to be a book that's really making a difference and contributing and moving the needle and doing all those kinds of things. And that's part of what I do. I like evaluate manuscripts. And one of the things I love about Morgan James is we put our vote, the majority of our vote, on the author, not on the manuscript, because manuscripts can get fixed. But, we're looking for people that are passionate about their message and that are fun and are really know where they're going with it. Because the reality is that, day one is an Amazon concept, but the day your book launches and it's pubbed and it's out there in the public, that's your day one. Like, you spend all your time writing and crafting and editing and getting this book ready, and it gets published and it's great. But then it's like, now what do you do? And you have to promote that book. You have to let people know that book's out there, and you have to keep letting those people know that that book is out there in order for that to make a difference. And so, if people go, oh, if we build it, they will come, doesn't really work in the book world. You can build it.
Actually, surprise, it doesn't really work anywhere, especially if you're somebody who's impatient.
Especially where?
If you're somebody who's impatient.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But what we're looking for are evergreen books, books that are just going to sell month after month after month, year after year after year, because the message is solid, and that message is making a difference. And so, the days of a book getting launched and spiking and selling, 1 million copies in the first 2 weeks, that those days are pretty much long gone. And
Yeah.
unless you're a celebrity. And even that, you'd be surprised. But if you know who your target market is, you're right. You don't write for a market, you write for a person. And so if you know who that person is and you know what keeps them up at night, you know where their pain points are, you know where their struggles are, and you can meet that need, then they're going to, like I said, they're going to recommend it to somebody else that they know who's struggling and not sleeping at night and has a need. And then that book is just going to continue going, month after month, year after year. And so that's really what we're looking for, is those kinds of books that are helping with the transformation process, so that, like we want to make the world a better place. And I really believe that books can do that.
Well, and we know they can. That's been proven out time and again since the printing press. Thank you, Gutenberg. We've been transformed by the written word as a culture, as a society, as a globe. So that is a truth at this point. So I feel like you just oriented all of us in a very clear way, because if you're looking for books that have this evergreen ability, then our audience needs to think in evergreen. They shouldn't write for something. I mean, we're recording in the summer of 24 right now. Their book shouldn't solve social media problems for January of 2025, because the sales are for December of 24 and they shut off in January of 25, never to be used again. So you don't want to timestamp it. You don't want to make it something that has a dwindling value, but that evergreen notion is critical. So thank you. What books would you hold up as great examples? As I think it's a really wise decision for somebody who's thinking about doing this to go look at who's done it and done well. And Bezos Letters obviously is one example. What other books should we be going and buying right now and putting not on our shelves, but in our hands to read, to understand the business model, to visit the websites associated with it, figure these authors out and how they're living out this book journey? Who's doing it right?
Sure. Well, let me answer that question in a different way.
You always do. I start something and you're like, nah, I'm going to answer my own question.
So instead of giving you names, what I would suggest is, if you know one person in your space that's written a book that you like, go on Amazon. Amazon's the best research tool out there, and look for comparables. And so if somebody says to me, oh, I've written a book and there are no other books written like this, this is the first of its kind, as a publisher, I go, oh, that makes me a little nervous, because that may mean that there's not a market. And so part of what happens when you bring a book to market, you're bringing your perspective, your spin, your personality, who you are to that book. So you could write a similar book, and the reality is that people that buy one book that they love will often buy another book that they love. So go to Amazon and find that person and go, oh, this was a book like, so Robert Cialdini's book on influence. That's a classic book. It's been around for 25 or 30 years. And
1984 is when he published it.
Well, thank you for knowing that date.
You're welcome. I've worked with Bob and his organization, so I know that way too well.
So you've got Cialdini's book, and then you go down and you go, oh, people who bought this book also bought that book. And then you find what other people are reading. And so you kind of go down that rabbit trail and you go, oh, they liked this book. And then you go on this, oh, that got 10,000 reviews, or that got 4 reviews, or that got, whatever. And then you go read the reviews and you go, oh, the majority of people like this. And I always say, as an author, celebrate your first 1-star review, because all of a sudden, if there's a 1-star review, they feel like it's not just your, friends and family that are reviewing the book. It's a psychological thing. But then go, oh, these are classic books. And then you go, oh, this book got a zillion reviews and I love this book. Then go to that book and go, others bought, and look at comparables, what other books are selling in the genre that you're in, and do a little digging, because you can see what people are buying. So for example, I could say, oh, Cialdini's book, Influence, that's a great book, and most people are interested in influence. But let's say you're a professional dog walker and you go, well, I don't know that book's the right book for me.
I gotcha.
But I could go, oh, you Google it or put it on Amazon, best-selling, dog walking books. And you find those books and then you go down there. So I wouldn't say particular books, it depends on what people's interests are, but the process of discovering what's going to be current in your field and what people are writing about and what are they not writing about. And then go and read the reviews and they go, yeah, well, they talked about this, but they didn't talk about that. You can get so much research in there of what people want to buy. And so it ends up being a process as opposed to a particular book or two that I'd recommend.
That's awesome. And it also gives us a great excuse to go get better and learn a little bit about our craft. So, I mean, we're checking a whole bunch of really good boxes with that activity. So, audience, if you're listening carefully, we know that Karen's sharing the dust jacket exercise with us. And you're supposed to go to Amazon. You have permission. This is a business expense that you can go to Amazon and research people in your market and see what their books are doing and how they're performing and see if there's a market for what you want to talk about and go buy a couple of them and read them and see what the other guys are doing and figure this out. This is the type of actionable information we're looking for in the show, because now today, and we can go to Scrivener too and do that as well. So we've got some stuff. We can put a stake in the sand and say, I'm going to figure out whether a book is for me. And remember, KarenAnderson.co is how you can learn a little bit more about Karen and spend some time maybe asking some questions, reaching out. Her expertise, by the way, is not for free. Please don't ask too many questions. She is an open book so much, but she is also a very giving person. So I am asking you to be respectful and do the nice things and follow her instructions and go down the road a little bit, because she just gave you a ton of free right there. But as her friend, I also know that she probably wants to help you. And so make sure it's a two-way street and do the right thing with that. You're so valuable. I don't want people to try too hard there. I want them to work with you, not against you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice people, man. Sometimes they get, they get not nice people asking too much. But I just love your expertise. I love how free you are with all of this. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it, Josh, so much.
And say hi to Steve for me. Say hi to all of my friends down in the Franklin, from here up in the Franklin area. Hey, are you coming to town anytime soon?
Yeah, hopefully be there in the fall. I'm hoping to be there in November. So
November, are you going to come to Terry's event, The Thing?
Yeah, planning to at this point. So
all right, well, audience, if you haven't heard about that, and you are going to hear more about that, Terry Weaver's event, The Thing, is in Orlando every November. Look up The Thing, and you can use Terry Weaver's name if you're Googling to help you find it, because, of course, The Thing could also get you weird movie monsters and stuff. But that is an entrepreneurial event that helps small and medium-sized entrepreneurial ventures, people who are trying to do their thing and do it better. It's a community of people who really care about each other. And Karen speaks there all the time, helping all of us understand how to be potential authors and do something with our books. And some of them are authors and don't even know what to do with their books, and she's helping with that too. So Karen, your expertise is always wonderful, and I will see you in November then. That is a plan. And hey, Terry, invite me to speak, would you? He usually asks me last minute because he knows I live down the street. But anyhow, awesome. You have homework. Audience, you have homework. Go do your homework right now. KarenAnderson.co. Get the downloads. Go play on Amazon. Write the book. Use that in every way you just learned how, and be better tomorrow than you were today as an entrepreneur. You know me. It's a bootstrapped entrepreneurship journey here. We don't know who the next person's going to be on the show. I have no clue. And what I can promise is that the next guest is going to be equally valuable and awesome and come here like Karen did and pour into your journey. So I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, get back to work.